In history, no country's government has ever survived mass migration. This is something which is apparently not studied in school. The most famous case was the influx of the Visigoths into Roman territory and Rome's subsequent defeat and sacking of Rome. Can such a thing happen here? The case is building for such a possibility. Think of the ramifications of this to America. In our case, mass migration into America would mean the loss of American exceptionalism, our Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, all of the things which serve as the basis for American liberty. It appears that the powers that be want this to happen, since both political parties have played a role in allowing our open borders. One ignores it, the other just talks about it. Nothing really changes, and the stream of migrants keeps crossing our borders. The topic of immigration is something all Americans should be aware of. It's not just the illegal immigrants that you need to be aware of. There's also the million-plus legal immigrants that come in each year. Add to that the refugees which the taxpayers support under the Special Immigrant Visa Program, or SIV program. As of last week, June 5th, 2023, Military.com reported, quote, "The program known as the Special Immigrant Visa, or SIV, has been beset by delayed processing and backlog for years. Advocacy groups estimate that tens of thousands of Afghans who may be eligible for SIVs and their family members remain in Afghanistan. As of the end of 2022, nearly 63,000 applicants were awaiting what is known as Chief of Mission approval, while another nearly 77,000 have at least started the application process, according to the State Department's most recent quarterly report," unquote. In a recent DHS document called Allies Welcome, it states, quote, "Arriving Afghans will be connected to non-governmental organizations for initial support and onward integration services. The State Department and the Department of Health and Human Services are leading these resettlement and integration efforts in close coordination with over 200 resettlement organizations and NGOs, and in partnership with generous help of state and local officials around the country." Connected to non-governmental organizations and generous help of state and local officials around the country is a great way of stating that Americans are footing the bill, while the Marxist organizations get to use these immigrants to push their agenda for supporting more government and socialism. The Afghanis are not the only people taking advantage of this program. Besides such programs as SIV, also consider that as of today, over 20 local governments around the country allow non-citizens to vote, and this number is under growing pressure to increase. The voting of non-citizens is becoming a serious problem in our nation's capital, and many congressmen are seeking tighter voting requirements as a result. Having undocumented immigrants vote in any local election is a recipe for disaster. Find out more by going to jbs.org. Click on Action Projects, then Restore Election Integrity. This is only one example of the movement to have immigrants voting as soon as possible. For those of you who've been following the John Birch Society for years may recall the Aztlan movement. We've carried several articles about it in our magazine, The New American. The Aztlan movement claims that the entire southwest United States is actually part of Mexico. Millions of people south of the border believe this. With the flood of immigrants crossing our southern border, how long do you think it will be before the Aztlan movement is revitalized to the extent of starting civil violence? It's likely that this movement will come back to life in full force with all of the immigrants who've been taught since birth that the greater Southwest was stolen from those with Mexican heritage, and these people are now inside the United States. They're going to want it back. What Americans may well witness are the illegal immigrants overwhelming our citizens by their sheer numbers in the so-called Epsilon area. This area along the southern border will have serious problems in the local and state governments, as well as civil unrest in the process. It poses a threat to the very sovereignty of a large part of the United States. Plus, in the past 20 years, large numbers of military-grade weapons have been smuggled into the country. Why? These weapons could well be used in terrorism and unrest aimed in support of the Epsilon movement. No one's talking about the ramifications of mass immigration in relationship to the problems with the Epsilon movement. We talk about such things because we have to be aware of what is being planned down the road by the conspiracy we battle. It all has to stop. And the best way to accomplish this right now is for the states to get involved in doing something about stopping illegal immigration. We ask that our members contact their state legislators and urge them to take strong legislative action to stop this mass migration, either across their concurrent border with Mexico and Canada or by not allowing the transfer of these migrants into their states. One of the means for doing this is to stop the free benefits given to the migrants, welfare in its various forms, free housing, food stipends, a telephone, etc. If they know that they cannot get these freebies, they are less likely to cross into the United States. Of course, we cannot neglect contacting our federal representation in Congress. Some talk a good fight, but at some point they have to actually start to do something. This will be the physical beginning of the loss of our country due to mass migration if things continue along the path they are. In some areas, our citizens will be simply outnumbered. That's simple. These are only hints at what is coming down the trail if mass migration continues. Start forming teams in your chapters, or if no chapter exists in your neighborhood, do it as individuals. Inform yourself more on this issue, and then meet with your state legislators as soon as possible. Start forming teams in your chapters. If no chapter exists in your neighborhood, do it as individuals. Inform yourself more on this issue, and then meet with your state legislators as soon as possible. One of the tools at your disposal is the article online at the New American called "States Must Take the Migration Issue into Their Own Hands. Here's How." Simply download it and reprint it locally. We cannot afford this problem to continue to spiral out of control. Contact your U.S. representative and senators and let them know of the need to stop radical mass migration policies. Links to this action alert can be found in the link below. Let Congress and those in your state legislature know where you stand on this issue. With your help, we can stop Biden's extremist open borders policies.